Thank you for coming. I hope everyone's having a great SIGGRAPH so far. So my name is Patricia Terol Tolsa. I'm a pipeline developer here at MPC in LA. I work on the 2D side of tools on our studio, so focus on Nuke Studio development as well. I've been over here for about 3 years now. So at our studio, we've been integrating Nuke Studio more and more for the time that I've been here. We started with our advertising side, and the film side as well has been utilizing it a lot lately, and latest on the Lion King project. So it's really been a game changer for us. It gives a lot of flexibility to the artists, and as well as in the technical side, we're able to add in anything that we need to integrate into our pipeline as seamless as possible. So it's been great for us. I'm just going to go over some of the tools that we've been creating and how we've done it on a very basic level, so that if anyone wants to give it a try or anything like that, so they can. So I'll just start right away. The first thing that we did was to add little things that would make a big difference to our artists. So we added custom presets. As you can see over here, this is the standard Nuke Studio exporter. But we created some of our presets so that the artists that come in and they don't know, where to put things or how to name things, they can have them there right away. So we added this. I found 2 ways to add this. The first one was if you wanted to show up in the exporter, just like that, you would just add literally the XML files that define those presets into this paths, depending if it's a shot processor or a timeline one. Be sure to change the version number over there. As you upgrade through the versions of Nuke Studio, you have to define it for each one of them. The other way that we did it as well was to just hide it from the exporter, because sometimes some of our tools want to use the presets to kick off some renders, for example, for our client delivery tools, but we don't want that to show up for our artists because it's not meant for them to use directly. So in order to do that, we just use the preset from XML in our code. That creates the preset from the XML path without showing up on there, and then you can just use the create and execute whenever you need it throughout the tools to just kick off that without ever touching the UI side. And if you want to lock in the presets for the artists, you can just change the XML files, and that will automatically show up with that little padlock that you saw before, and then they can't not mess with the definitions on there. Another thing that we did was maybe depends on preference, but sometimes you want to remove some of the standard ones that come in loading, and you just want to show your default ones for the studio so people don't get confused. So it was really easy to do that. We just had to add this method and literally pass nothing to it, and then just define it, and then that would automatically just skip that loading. So another thing that we did was add farm rendering. That was very important for our artists to be able to hook up to our farm system. So I suggest for anyone who doesn't know this, Foundry has a lot of very cool script examples. They're a great starting point for developing various little tasks. So I suggest going there for this kind of things as a start point, because it helped us a lot. So basically, we just took the example that they had, and then it's 3 basic examples on a big scale. This example is for Rush. We are using tractors, so it's different for us, but we were able to easily customize it for our own, and then that hooked it up to our render farm. Another thing that we added was some custom guides, custom soft effects, little things that make a big difference for the artists. So in this, I literally just want to say, Google the scripts, and it's so straightforward. You can just change the values, and it'll work right away. So I won't add anything to that. It is really, really straightforward. So another thing that we did was when you open up a new script, we wanted everyone to be able to work in an organized fashion so that files are not all over the place. And then if a supervisor picks up a project from another artist, they know where everything is, because everyone has different ways of working. So we decided to make a custom template. So when you create new script, it automatically comes in with this folder structure so that everyone knows where to place their input plates and everything else. And we also added a miscellaneous elements folder. This will load automatically some of like little elements like plates like white frame, black frame, things that are useful for every project. And this is already there anytime you just create a new script. That way it's not confusing for anyone. So the way we did this was just utilize the after new project created method. And then you just create. In the create method, you add any of the creation for the bins or loading any of the plates that you need. And then you just define it with that one line at the end and place that script onto your Python startup directory. And that will automatically happen when you create a new script. And the way we did this, on very simple terms, is just you get the main project bin, which is the top one that you see for the project. And then you would create bins as you need them. However you want to create the structure, and then you just add those bins onto the project bin or subdirectories. And then you would add clips for those plates that you saw there. So you get the path of those, and then you just create a clip object for that. And then you add them to the bins. It's very straightforward. One important thing that we came across along the way was when you are adding clips to those bins, make sure you put a bin item, like you create a bin item for that, and then add it to the bin rather than doing that straight away because it won't see it properly. So it's very, very, very important to do the bin item first, and that gave us a little trouble in the beginning. So. Something else that we did was create, so in Nuke Studio, you can go into each shot that you have on the timeline and right away create a comp from that so that you can tweak things on the spot and then go back to the timeline and so forth. So what we did was add on top of this a little bit so that this scripts would be a little more customized to our needs directly and make it easier for the artists to just work right away as they do normally outside of Nuke Studio. So we added functionality like some of our write node, for example, which just makes everything go into the same place that they would if they were working just out of Nuke straight up. So this is how we did it, which is utilize the actual create comp functionality and then just add it on top of that to be able to add our custom things. So another one of our tools, this is utilized more on the advertising side, was to create a custom exporter. So instead of using the Nuke Studio exporter, which we use for other things, this exporter would work directly with our asset management. So we're utilizing FTrack on our advertising side, and this just works off with FTrack to just create project files, directories, and render the plates right away. So it puts everything in its place. It's very easy for artists. They just have to set it up and click one button, and nothing gets messed up, which has been a game changer. So the way we did this was basically to work with FTrack. They provided some initial point, and then we tweaked that along the way a lot to customize it for our needs. But a very important thing that we did was utilize the tagging system a lot from Nuke Studio. So you can, in Nuke Studio, you can drop tags onto the timeline shots and to be able to add information or define things. So what we did was create a lot of custom tags for our exporter. And we did them, for example, for tasks. So we were able to mark shots with the needs that they needed, like for comp or lighting or whatever. So the supervisor would just drag that into the shots, and you would be able to see what every shot needs to be done and where on the locations for our different sites. And as well as some custom types of plates so that we could utilize that as well. So the way we did this, it's quite simple. You just create a tag, and then you add the metadata that you would need on that tag so you can define anything that you want. We added things like the site where it needed to happen or information about the type of task that it was. And then once we're on the exporter code, we can just grab that metadata from the tag and then right away know, oh, this shot needs to be done in LA for comp and lighting or something like that. And then something else that we utilized the tags for was we have a functionality for creating timelines from our playlist. So in our custom asset management, it would bring in the playlist information for each shot, load the timeline with that, and then it would tag all those shots that came from the playlist and say, this is the daily film the playlist, so that we could add on to that and then utilize that for other functionality later on. So one more tool that we did, and this was widely used both in advertising and film side, was the is like a create track from. So we basically have a option to select. In advertising, it works for types of files, and in film, we have it for disciplines, but it's basically the same. You just select like comp, for example, and it'll create a track on your timeline with the latest for each shot that you selected, bringing that info from the asset manager. So it will bring in the latest dailies from comp or the latest input plates and just load them right there with the latest versions that there's available for each one of those. So this is pretty much how we did it on a big scale. You just grab the selection from the timeline. We did that so that you were able to do only specific shots and not just the entire timeline. Sometimes that is quite huge. So you just select whatever you want, and then using that selection, we create media source objects for each one of the paths of the versions that came in, and then create clip objects off of that media that we just brought in, and then add that as a source to the track items on your timeline for the new track. Two very important things. Again, the bin item, before you add things, you have to add the bin item object. And something really important was that you cannot set the source of a track item with a clip without adding it to the viewer. So it has to be added as an so if you see here the second from the bottom, you have to add that as an item to a viewer and then set it as a source. Otherwise, it won't work as it should. And then another thing that we did functionality-wise was create some tools that would allow to add information into the viewer. So we utilize this for like review sessions. So when there's a review, there's someone driving that review session with the client, and they can see everything on the computer, and they can see feedback if they're using a review tool or something. But the people watching the review as well, the clients, they wanted to see what was the feedback for that shot or the information for that shot. So what we did was made it into a text so that it would load up on the image on top of it. So you're able to see like the comments that were done for that shot, so they can be discussed during the session. Or another thing that we did with this as well was to load in the status of all the different disciplines for that shot. So once you clicked on that, you were able to see like anim is done, lighting is done, stereo needs work, or something like that. So it was really easy for them to just go shot by shot in the timeline and then see all the statuses of it or the info that they needed for those shots. And then obviously, this was only like some of the tools that we worked on. We've worked on a lot of tools over the past like 3 years to add Nuke Studio more and more into our development and our artist tools. So some of the other tools that we've done are things like a custom EDL loader so that they don't have to go and find the EDLs wherever they are. Some of our artists don't know where in the paths they are. So you just select your shot, your sequence, and your version, and it will load the entire timeline based off of that EDL. We did a send to functionality, that's what we call it. It's basically just to cache the timelines on other locations. So if I was working on something and I knew there was a review session later on, I could just cache that onto the review room or a supervisor's computer right away, and then they were able to just play that much faster. We did some work with stereo as well, and we integrated a lot of our proprietary tools, so they were able to bring those in and play around with the timeline with those as well. And we have some custom open saves as well, so that the artist can just save right away without having to name things, because naming scripts becomes a nightmare when everyone decides what they want to name things. And then what else? Oh yeah, and then we have also a lot of functionality as to changing the sources on the timeline, so that instead of creating tracks for everything that you wanted to see, like the different daily versus ProRes or things like that, then you were just able to click a hotkey and then it would change the source of that track item. So you were able to compare right away without having to build a lot of tracks and things like that. And that many, many more tools that I would not have time to cover, because we could have an hour for each one of them. So yes, that's some of our tools. I hope that was inspiring or helpful in any way. And feel free to approach me if you have any questions or anything about that later. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the Foundry.